Was there ever any worse advice than write what you know? Who were the Wrights ever? What would they knew? Did Charlotte Bronte live in a grand country house with a man named Edward Rochester who tried to commit bigamy with her before she wrote Jane Eyre? Was Gustave Flaubert a woman who committed adultery before he wrote Madame Bovary? And how many of us could write a good book if we only wrote what we knew? As writers, we have to make things up if we want to spin a good yarn. We have to make a murder or two, a broken heart, a bank robbery, a ride in a spaceship. But what those writers, Flaubert and Bronte, had in common was that they made you feel that they did know those lies, that they did have those experiences. They made us believe the lie. So, what is the big problem when we come to writing about other cultures? What's the big problem when it's a white person writing the voice of a black person, or a Chinese person, or an Indian? Isn't it the same as crossing gender and ability? There are a few words there that might give us a clue as to why it's become a thing, a talking point, not just in literature, but in dance, in music, in dress, and film. Those words are dominant, minority, and imbalance. Chances are you've heard about cultural appropriation, but it can be tricky to understand. The name is a bit of a mouthful, but cultural appropriation happens when a dominant group takes something from a group experiencing oppression. We will explore cultural appropriations, what it looks like, what it means, and how it can be addressed through these pieces. Don't Dip Your Pen in Someone Else's Blood by Kit DeWall, Who Are You? Ode to Cultural Appropriation by Sequoia Henry, Why Cultural Appropriation Isn't Cool by Rita.com, Cultural Appropriation in Fashion by Akashi Sitavatava, and Dear Black Women by Heaven Mbashu, a program. Why is cultural appropriation a problem? Because it continues the oppression of the non-dominant culture. When we look at a culture that's experiencing oppression, it is often the result of colonization, where a dominant group has claimed ownership of the land and its people. It doesn't give people credit for their own culture. Cultural appropriation also has a nasty habit of giving the dominant group credit for aspects of a culture that they have taken, reinforcing the power imbalance between the two groups. There is a fine line between freedom of expression and open disrespect, but who decides it? A designer must know the difference between paying respect and exploiting a culture. However, it is surprising to see many mainstream designers constantly contributing towards cultural appropriation in the fashion industry. It is not something new, but prevailing for decades. For instance, during the 17th century, English and French aristocrats adopted the three-piece suit from the traditional ensemble of Islamic countries. Who are you to criticize her and wear her clothes, to make fun of her culture, but look in the mirror and say, it looks good on me, and wear it the next day, just because you can? When it comes to Marc Jacobs, cultural appropriation fashion shows is nothing new. The Spring-Summer 2017 show featured mainly white models like Carly Kloss, Gigi Bella Hadid, and Kendall Jenner swarmed across the runway wearing faux dreadlocks hairdo. Most likely, Mark was unaware that black women get fired from jobs and discriminated against at work for wearing their ethnic styles, including dreadlocks. Because black people aren't pretty. It's just their full lips, dark eyes, nose, brows, hairstyles, and music. That is because Indian people are only 7-Eleven cashiers. Definitely not the people who do your beautiful henna and have cultural significance with the bindis you love to go to Coachella with. In literature, one of the most famous examples of white people crossing that line and writing as a black person is the case of Catherine Sackett, who wrote The Help in 2009. That book spent 100 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list and is based on the lives of black female maids in American southern states. The book is written in the voices of two black women and is set in Jackson, Mississippi during racial segregation and the Ku Klux Klan lynchings. It is also written in the idiomatic black vernacular. Despite initially being hailed as the most important book since To Kill a Mockingbird, the book and subsequent film have been widely condemned by academics, critics, and commentators, alleging that the novel trivializes, misrepresents, and stereotypes the black women, black men, and black community, and presents black liberation and success as being dependent upon white intervention and goodness. You're pretty for a black girl. Are you mixed with anything? I don't date black girls. Too smart for a black girl. As writers, we do not want to give offense. No one wants to be called a racist, yet we want the freedom to write the books we choose, to inhabit other lives and explore the full range of our imagination and ability. How can we do that? How do we walk the line between cultural appropriation and artistic license? If we want to have black characters in our work, we need to ensure that they are fully rounded, viable, flawed, sometimes unlikable, but believable and authentic people, not representative of a whole culture, but representative of themselves. We have to ask ourselves, who are we and what are we trying to say in speaking as the other? Our aim should not be only to write well, but to do no harm along the way. As if your blackness is too bold, as if it would be better cooled off and watered down. No, this is black, no sugar, no additives. Now you want a mouthful of my culture, homegrown and organic, feasting, draining me of which comes with my faith, my skin, my body. How do we do it right? Even though it's a simple notion of grasp, many people still believe that the ability to express themselves through henna stickers and Amazon bought bendies is more essential than considering the culture that they are stealing. We can avoid cultural appropriation in fashion if designers and celebrities embrace the history behind their inspiration. Also, they must work with artists from said community and give them due credit. If we are researching our particular culture or language or religion, we have to remember that no one person can speak for a nation. So, whilst research is important, we have to make sure we listen carefully and respectfully, analyzing and deconstructing what we are told or what we discover. No longer can we sit in the shadows, and no longer will we accept what they say. Remember, you are royalty, dark eyes, thick thighs, no more apologies. You are a whole movement. You are worth the conversation. Take up your space, queen. Be unapologetic. Don't be lazy and assume we know because we have a black friend or a Sikh neighbor. It creates stereotypes. The Native American chief, the Japanese geisha, or the Arab Sikh can be examples of that pop up during Halloween. When people from dominant cultures dress up like this, it reduces something of cultural significance to a costume, just so that the dominant group can have a bit of fun. During their show in 2010, models donned animal print lingerie surrounded by men in sarongs and skirts. All the models, both male and female, were covered with black lines and other patterns. Similarly, during the 2012 show, angels walked the ramp to represent a month of the year and a holiday associated with it. Carly Claus walked down the runway wearing a feather headpiece with suede fringe and leopard print lingerie for November to represent Thanksgiving. There are times when it's encouraged to try something from a different culture, so the all-important ideas of dominance and imbalance don't exist here, which is what makes cultural appropriation a problem in the first place. When you have lost everything as a nation or a tribe or a culture, like the Native Americans who have lost their land and have been reduced to the role of savages in cowboy films, or treated like crap and addressed by the President of the United States as thieves and rapists like it is for the Mexicans in the US, what remains, things like language or food or the sombrero or the headdress, becomes doubly important and maybe to some people disproportionately important, but those things mean more than what those things are. They mean a whole culture. They mean everything because they represent what was lost. So maybe before you sport generalized Native American feathers or dress up like Pocahontas next year, think about the parts of your culture you hold most dear.